Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Yeah, so for this distance lesson, we're gonna change out the spark plugs in the bike. A quick recap, we got a new battery in this thing. We cleaned the fuel tank, took off the fuel tank. Fuel system appears to be working, so we got fuel. Got air to the engine. And now we're gonna see if we can get spark. We bypassed the ignition switch or hot wired it in class yesterday. Learned about our multimeter and volts, amps, and continuity or resistance. So yeah, these spark plugs look old, so we're gonna change those out first. I already tested for spark and didn't get any. To do that, I took one of the caps off. And on an old vehicle or bike like this, you want to be real gentle wiggling those off. You don't want to break anything in here. So yeah. And then you'll notice that these are labeled for each cylinder because in an engine there's something called a firing order. So in other words, this spark plug wire goes to this cylinder, and you don't want to cross them. So make sure you take note when you're doing this where each plug wire goes. So I wiggled that off. I got my wrench set up, or my socket wrench. I'm using the right size socket. This is the new plug. Fits really well in there. See, there's very minimal play. Like I've always said, I love to run extensions. I could run a shorter extension down there, but I don't want to bend over. So yeah, I just loosen this guy up. Get this thing to work. And spark plugs shouldn't be in there tight. Just tight enough, you know. You don't want to crank them and break them off in there. So there's the plug. And these plugs could be okay, but they're really old, so it's just better to replace them and just eliminate that possibility of bad plugs. So when I tested this for spark, what I did is I took the spark plug out, put it in the thing, in the spark plug wire holder. Then all you do is you ground that metal to the frame, because we know our frame's negative, and then you crank over the engine. And if this has spark, you'll see a spark there. And we'll cover that more in class, but for now we're just going to replace the plugs. Go ahead and take this plug wire off. And if there's a chance you could mess up the plug wires and cross plug wires, you know, you could do each cylinder individually. You could take off the old plug, put in the new one, put the plug wire on the new plug, and that way there'd be much less of a chance of you crossing wires. You basically couldn't. But I know where these wires go. They're marked, so I'm going to go ahead and pull all the plugs. Also, when I pulled the plugs, you know, I felt them, and I felt fluid on them. I smelt the plugs, and they smell like gas, which is a good thing. That means my carburetor is working. So now I'm on the other side. Got my caps off, got them oriented so I'm not going to cross them. Earlier in the day, I checked my coil, the ignition coil, which is basically the device that creates the spark for the spark plug, and it had power. So I'm really hopeful that I can get this bike spark pretty soon, and hopefully it starts. This is just a normal socket, but a spark plug socket will actually have rubber in there, and so when you take the spark plug off, it'll actually stay in the socket so you don't lose it or drop it. But luckily I'm able to get my hand down here and just take it out with my hand. When you're working with spark plugs, it's really important to not drop them, because each spark plug has a set gap. So if you guys can see between the tip of the plug and that top thing, that's called the spark plug gap. And that's a special measurement that you don't want to mess up and you don't want to drop. So I got my new plugs, and what I'm going to do, these were brand new, but I always like to check and make sure the gap is the right gap, and our gap's supposed to be about 2.5, so I use this little spark plug gapper and I check them all. And I checked all those for the video, before the video. I know they're all good. So this is where, you know, if I drop that, it could land on the top and mess up the gap. So you want to be real careful not to drop them. And if you dropped them, it's not the end of the world, but it's just better not to. So I'm just setting all my spark plugs in here by hand. Whenever you're able to start something by hand, you know, that's always the best bet. If you start bolts or spark plugs or nuts with a tool, you have much more of a chance of stripping them out. But with your hand, you can really feel if it's going in smooth. So you got everything set by hand. I take my extension and my socket, and I'm used to working really fast, so I like to not have the wrench on there, and then I can just spin it like this. Super fast, right? It's on there. Can't turn it anymore with my hand, so I get my socket wrench out. The socket wrench is kind of junky. Then I just do a little turn till it kind of bottoms out in there, and that's enough. On to the next plug. This extension doesn't fit great in here, but we're able to make it work. But yeah, really hopeful this bike will fire up. If not, you know, that's okay. We will be able to diagnose some other stuff. All right, that plugs in. I'm on this side, so I'm going to go ahead and put my caps back on. Come over to my other side. Spin my plug in. Started it by hand so I wouldn't strip anything or cross thread anything. Just give it a little extra. Go onto this one. A little more challenging. Yeah, the nice thing about motorcycles is there's just a lot of access to the engine. You know, a lot of cars, it's really tight to get into things. Spark plugs could take a lot longer. Alrighty, plugs are in. I got all my tools. Put last two caps on. And we're ready to go. Alright, so that was spark plugs on a 1982 Honda cb750 Custom. Have a good day, everyone. Thanks, bye.